What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Killmark Collectors. I'm Brandon, and today we are going to be talking about how to kill some capital ships. What I want to do here is we are going to talk through some of the various aspects of carriers and carriers and dreadnoughts, and specifically talking about the ways that we can kind of exploit some of the weaknesses to get some of those really nice kill mills. Now, the original intent of this video was that it was going to be a giveaway and a way to give you guys some of the discount codes for the Neon Rain event. Unfortunately, after over a week, I think it's almost been, I still don't have those discount codes. So what I'm going to do is if you guys go into the Killmark Collectors Discord, I'll create a channel. We can figure out how to actually get some of those once I get them. But do be in there so that I can put out a ping and you guys can see those and go and grab them. Now, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and dive into the Fulmination test server and start talking about how you guys can get some of those 50 billion-ish kill mills. Let's undock and get started. Carriers and dreads have a lot of potential in Eve Echoes. I don't think anybody's going to discount the fact that these behemoths are a way that has kind of galvanized the community over the last couple of weeks, especially when it comes to people who may have stepped away from the game. It's something big and shiny to get people back involved. And we can debate the merits of the Neon Rain event. I have opinions about that, and I'm probably going to share those in another video later this week. So what we're going to do is I'm going to kind of walk you through a few scenarios and a few different tactics and tricks that you may be able to leverage to help you get some of those kills. So looking at what NetEase has actually put out with their first to build capitals contest, I guess, we know that there's a lot of Revelations and Nalgafars. I still cannot pronounce that thing. I don't really know why they named it that. And those two ships in particular, I think, are appropriate for being the first ones that are built. Now, the first thing that you look at with the Revelation, it does have some insane optimal ranges. I think just with one tracking computer, I was getting up to almost 200 kilometers of optimal range. And obviously with lasers being especially effective against shields, and that I think really kind of being the current meta, you have a lot of options and there's a lot of use for the Revelation. On the flip side, the Nalgafar is also very good as a sniper dreadnought. I think that it does actually have a little bit more versatility because of the fall off and the way that that is calculated. To give you guys just an idea, if you're not familiar with fall off and optimal ranges, basically the idea is that your optimal range you hit at 100% of your damage if you are, everything standing still. Basically, your first fall off you do 50%, and then at the second fall off you're only doing 7%. And so the idea is that with a dreadnought you're out at obscene ranges and you're able to go ahead and start applying that obscene damage at 200 kilometers. The problem that you have with the Revelation, and why I actually like the Nalgafar a little bit better, is because as a dreadnought, you're not going to be moving around a whole lot. And so you have to be positioned and to warp in perfectly in order to be able to really apply that full damage. If you don't, if you say you only warp into 100 to a citadel or something like that, or you're only on field at 100, and yes, I know that there are other ways to do this, but just bear with me for a second. If you are warping in at that range, you're already out of that optimal. You still are going to apply damage, but it's just not going to be as effective. Whereas the Nalgafar, because it has that insane fall off, I think it is a little bit better suited for fleet combat, at least right now. And again, we will see the meta evolve, but I think right now the Nalgafar does give you a little bit better options with regards to PvP against other dreadnoughts. Moving on from the capitals onto the battleships themselves, I did go ahead and test the Tempest, the Apocalypse, the Raven, and the Megathron. Now, of these, my favorite was actually the Raven, and the reason for that is that I put large torpedoes on this thing, and as you guys can see, I was hitting for well over 10k damage because, amazingly, capital ships are actually big enough to be hit by large torpedoes. It's amazing how that works, right? Now with that, the other benefit of the Raven is that you are able to go at full speed. Missiles will always hit, and then also because of the way damage applies, they basically are well suited to fight shield or armor tank ships, so you have a little bit more versatility there. The next ship that I really like is the Tempest, and I think that this is probably my personal favorite because it gives you, again, with the cannons, it gives you a little bit more flexibility because of that longer fall off. So you can still stay outside of scram range if there is a scram and webs on the Dreadnought. You can still stay basically from that 15 to 22 kilometer kill zone, if you will, whereas with the Raven, the large torpedoes, you really had to stay under 17 kilometers. That really doesn't give you much margin for error. I don't think that a Dreadnought will slingshot you, but it's something to consider because there is a little bit smaller margin for error there. I did also like the Apocalypse and the Megathron. However, they both kind of suffer from the same issue of having that optimal range and fall off problem. With the Megathron, you had to get a little bit closer in with the snubs. The APOC, you did stay out a little bit further. Again, I don't think it's a huge issue, but especially with the APOC, since it is more suited for shields than armor, I just personally don't like it quite as much as the Raven and Tempest, but they're all great ships, and you get enough of them and you will start killing things. The other big vulnerability that these capitals have is their capacitor. And while it seems like they have just an absurd amount of cap, the fact is that when you start running a large shield booster or a large armor repair, I haven't seen as many people with extender fits at this point. That might change. I don't really think it will until we really start seeing a lot of capital versus capital warfare. But with any of these options, the capacitor is large, but it also runs out really fast. When we were doing the faction war games, I think this was really the biggest thing. I talked about it in a different video that would determine the winner of those matches. The person who ran out of cap first was oftentimes the one who lost. If you look at the kill mails on some of the carriers that have already come out, you'll see that there's 14 to 20 participants on most of these. Now, if we assume that even just 10 of these are battleships and the others are tackle or rats or something like that, you can legitimately say that if you were to have everybody throw a large newt on there, you would be doing over 6,000 gigajoules of capacitor drainage or damage, whatever, every 24 seconds. When we look at how much it takes for them to also heal themselves over, I think it's almost 2,600, I think, for the large cap, the ability for you to start nuding those down and drain that capacitor can be really impactful. Also remember, because of the way that the NOSes work, if you are draining a capital, the percentages of how that works work out in your favor, so you can actually both newt and NOS somebody at the same time. Add into all of this the fact that they are going to be healing themselves, again at that 2,600 gigajoules each cycle, and you can run out of cap pretty quickly on some of these capital ships. Alright, so finally, we need to talk a little bit about actually avoiding some of this damage. Obviously, the tracking speed of these capital ships is abysmal. You can speed tank these in a battleship. I did it with a micro warp drive and with an afterburner. Even with one web on, I was able to still speed tank in a Tempest. So it is possible. However, the other things to consider here, because everybody's going to say, well, carriers, you can't speed tank because fighters and blah, 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 blah. And that's true. But fighters are susceptible to webs, and so if you actually web a single fighter, you're webbing the entire group. You can see here that I was able to keep them a little bit further back. You do have to continuously be looking at how close they are so that you can reapply those webs, but you do have the option. And so again, if you are working with a group, maybe you have a couple of cruisers, or maybe you even have somebody like a Corax who has an extended web range, you can really keep those fighters pinned down and allow those battleships and other ships to defang or dethorn or whatever it is, to defang that carrier and be able to ultimately basically make it defenseless. And let's be honest here, when fighters are still, I think, 50 million a pop, even just killing a couple of them kind of stings. The other really interesting thing about capitals is they are susceptible to EWAR. What I did is I went ahead with an Arbiter Covert Ops 3. I started using tracking disruptors on the Nalgafar, and you can see that with the range of the Nalgafar going from almost 300 kilometers, I think, down to it was just over 80 or something like that. I mean, you can really get a lot of benefit from being able to use some of that traditional EWAR, and if you've got 4 or 5 ships all running at least 2 or 3 EWAR slots, you can basically neuter a capital. I think this is something that may get changed. I believe in EVE Online that they are actually immune to EWAR. But for now, if you see some of those on grid and it becomes a capital versus capital ship when you're both at 200 kilometers, a little bit of EWAR could basically negate an 80 or a 50 billion ISK ship. We'll see. But that's it for today, guys. Thanks so much for joining. Do appreciate you sticking with me. Like I said before, go down into the description and grab the link for the Killmark Collectors Discord. As soon as I get those discount codes, I will throw them in there so that you guys are able to get some of that. Like I said, I'll probably also do a video about the Neon Rain event and some of my thoughts there. Spoiler alert, it's not great, but we'll deal with that another day. So until next time, thanks so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe to this video if you enjoyed it. And as always, remember, Killmarks last forever and fly safe.